first for you, anatomy or yoga?
Technically, yoga came first. I was working in a natural food restaurant when I was in high school, and it was here that I met my Tai Chi teacher, who also introduced me to yoga. So this was 1988, so 17 years old, and doing Tai Chi, and then he introduced me to yoga, and so I took that with me to university and to school, which is harder to maintain a yoga practice while also going to college, but intermittently I did practice. And then when I left university is when I went to massage school, and where I more formally learned anatomy. The three bones that come together are the clavicle, the scapula, and the humerus. Now keep in mind that the clavicle is the only bone on this entire extremity that connects bone to bone with what we call the axial skeleton. There's no other connection. The rest of this, all of this, is held only by tissue to the body. So that can make this a potentially weak point. Yeah. Very common injured area for Supta Kurmasana in particular, but even other binds where the arm is pulled up too high, because when you look at the movements going on here, the clavicle, we'll do clavicle and scapula together for a moment. They both do what we call elevation and depression, right? Lifting the shoulder, dropping the shoulder, elevate, depress. And then they both go forward and backward, which we call protraction and retraction. Sometimes it's called abduction and adduction of the scapula, but protraction and retraction. And then they split off. The clavicle has the ability to rotate. This is where it gets into trouble. It's when it's being rotated and protracted simultaneously. So here's the thing. Because most people are going to have a lot of tension here, it's like, the abdomen tightening or the glutes turning on. It's one of those kind of patterns. Okay. Beginners are going to have a tendency, if you tell them to reach their arms over their head, and you don't give very specific way of doing it, they're just going to go.
Okay.
And they're just adding on to that sort of, that was a little too strongly. They just add on to that negative pattern that they have outside of practice.
Okay.
Right? Because we have to look at the practices. Part of it is to undo conditioned existence. At least that's what we chanted at the beginning of the Ashtanga. So, are we adding to the conditioning or are we reducing the conditioning? Of course, that there it's really meant in a mental way, in a living your entire life way. But we can apply it to the physicality as well. Right? We're trying to balance out the patterns. So, that's what's more important, not whether that one is good or bad or right or wrong. It's how does it fit into that person and their normal patterns. The asana practice is about exploring. It's about checking out yourself and looking into every nook and every cranny. I kind of said it in the workshop. It's like if you go to the doctor and because you're asking the question based on general rules of what movement should be.
Yeah.
So let's have the doctors hold that line of what that's supposed to be. Actually, my neighbor across the street is an orthopedic doctor, and so we kind of go back and forth a little. Super nice guy. But if I asked him, so when I put my foot behind my head, he's going to be like, why would you ever put your foot behind your head? Or why would you ever put yourself into the shape of a deep back bend or hold on to your ankles? Or, I mean, that's not required for normal everyday activities. So then they would ask, why would you bother to do that? I think from the yoga perspective, however, It's like, it's not just can I open my body enough that I can do that posture, it's like, what is it even like to head in that direction? And play with the edges of what I think is possible. I think that's what becomes more important about it. And whether you arrive or not doesn't matter. But when you really start to go inside, you start to realize that there's self-reflection going on in the midst of that. Or there's a certain training to the nervous system of how to deal with being in that position. Or I think that's what becomes more important and interesting than whether you can do the pose or get out of the pose once you've gotten into it
and walk home.
And then walk home.